Moses murders an Egyptian overseer who he saw abusing a Hebrew slave. He flees Egypt to avoid the consequences of the sixth commandment. He arrives in Midian and helps the daughters of the Midianite priest who are being prevented by shepherds from accessing a well. The daughters report back to their father and say, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock." Exodus chapter 2, verse 19. This again shows that a Hebrew in Egyptian clothes was simply taken for an Egyptian. There is a famous episode in Exodus when God speaks to Moses through a burning bush. This is the first encounter between God and Moses. What is not as well known is that Moses asked for divine proof to show the elders of the Israelites that he really had been sent by God. He is given the ability to perform two miracles. The first was turning a rod into a snake. The second was Moses turning his hand white. God then gives a commentary on the miracles. "And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign." Exodus chapter 4, verse 19. The object of having two miracles was obviously to convince everyone. It is evident from the story that the purpose of the second miracle was to convince those who had not been impressed by the first one. This strongly suggests that the second miracle was seen as more impressive. The divine commentary above turned out to be as good as hindsight because Pharaoh was not impressed by turning rods into snakes. Moses performed the second miracle in front of the Israelite elders. We are told in the Torah that there were 600,000 men amongst the Israelites. Assuming a very conservative estimate of one elder for every 1,000 men would give Moses an audience of at least 600 elders. The change of hand color to white would have to be visible from a distance, given a minimum crowd of 600. A change of color from tan to white would not be visible from the back of the crowd and would not be seen as more impressive than turning a rod into a snake. The only change of color that could be seen by everyone in a crowd and would be more impressive than the first is a change from a black complexion to a white one. The changing of skin color is mentioned again in a little-known episode from the book of Numbers. It occurs as a punishment. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian, Cushite woman he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, "Hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us?" And the Lord heard it. And the Lord came down in a pillar of the cloud, and stood in the door of the tabernacle, and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, "Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known to him in a vision, and will speak to him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them. And he departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon her, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not this sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. Numbers chapter 12, verse 1. Biblical writers of European ancestry have historically viewed this passage as Miriam expressing disapproval of intermarriage between Hebrews and Ethiopians based on skin color. Anyone who accepts this interpretation, however, also has to accept that to speak against an Ethiopian's color is to sin and have done foolishly. The punishment in this light would indeed be ironic. Black biblical writers, on the other hand, have stressed the cultural differences between Hebrews and Ethiopians, Midianites, as having been the reason, and have denied color being the issue. Some interesting facts emerge from the passage. Even though the origins of the problem appear to be with speaking against the Ethiopian wife, God does not mention the wife at all in his rebuke. His concern is with the critique of the uniqueness of the relationship between God and Moses, a critique he corrects. God then becomes angry and specifically punishes Miriam. A reconstructed picture emerges if we include facts known about these individuals from elsewhere in the Bible and combine them with common sense about human nature. The first expression of dissatisfaction is in verse 1, where Miriam, Moses' older sister, the wife is referred to as the Ethiopian, simply to identify her in what was very likely a polygamous household. This Ethiopian woman was the daughter of the priest of Midian, Exodus chapter 2, verse 16. She is elsewhere named as Zipporah, Exodus chapter 2, verse 21. She was clearly outspoken and would not hesitate to chastise Moses when he neglected his duties. See Exodus chapter 4, verse 25. Miriam's friction with Zipporah can be seen as a battle for influence over the prophet between his older sister and his outspoken wife. Miriam instigated this, but could not motivate Aaron to side with her on this basis alone, hence the inclusion of "hath the Lord only spoken" by Moses. This would have been easy to exploit because Moses was slow of speech and of a slow tongue, Exodus chapter 4, verse 10, while Aaron could speak well, Exodus chapter 4, verse 14, yet it was the Moses who was chosen as the prophet. In the story, God was evidently happy to leave human affairs to humans until a dispute involved him. When God steps in, the real instigator of the problem is punished, and Aaron gets off with a warning. The Ethiopian wife is clearly not the real issue, whether because of color or culture. In any case, Aaron and Miriam are family with Moses in the story. Since it took a miracle for two of them to turn white as snow, in contrast to their natural complexion, we can be sure none of the family were white. Not being white is not the same, however, as being black, so we shall see whether the precise complexion can be narrowed down. The Levitical Laws. Moses received Levitical laws regarding cleanliness while in the wilderness with the Israelites. These laws tell a similar story about the general complexion of the ancient Hebrews. We are introduced to the concept of biblical leprosy. When a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab or bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priests. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 2. A rising is clearly any swelling above skin level, and a bright spot is any area lighter than the rest of the skin. We are then told in verses 4, 39, and 28 that if the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. Verse 4. And behold, if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh be darkish white, It is a freckled spot that groweth in the skin, he is clean. Verse 39. And if the bright spot stay in his place, and spread not in the skin, but it be somewhat dark, it is a rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Leviticus chapter 13, verses 4, 39, and 28. We are thus told that the Hebrews were neither white, nor dark white, nor somewhat dark. One could reasonably say that they were not Nordic, Mediterranean, nor of a tawny complexion. This certainly narrows down the complexion possibilities. In regards to hair in Leviticus, we read, If a man or woman have a plague upon the head or the beard, then the priest shall see the plague. And behold, if it be in sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry scall, even a leprosy upon the head or beard. And if the priest look on the plague of the scall, and behold, it be not in sight deeper than the skin, and that there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut him up that hath the plague 7 days. Leviticus chapter 13, verses 29 to 31. It is clear from the above that yellow thin hair in this context was considered unclean.
Won't let you get away with this!
While black hair was the general hair color of the Hebrews. In conjunction with the complexion implied by the leprosy laws, this strongly suggests people of African appearance. The Fitzpatrick skin tone chart explains the inverse relationship between the susceptibility of skin to solar damage on the one hand and trauma, UV-induced pigmentation on the other. Its development started in 1972 with the research of Dr. Thomas Fitzpatrick of Harvard Medical School. The more susceptible one is to solar damage of the skin, then the less susceptible they are to trauma-induced or UV-induced pigmentation increase. Please note, the Fitzpatrick skin tone chart can be found on the website of the New Zealand Dermatological Society Incorporated, dermnetnz.org. The complexion range amongst the ancient Hebrews was from brown, similar to Beyoncé's complexion, to dark brown, similar to Naomi Campbell's complexion. This is in agreement with Moses and Joseph being mistaken for Egyptians, Moses' hand turning white as an impressive miracle, and his sister Miriam being punished by a complexion so at odds with her general appearance.
camera action. Before you go anywhere, don't forget to click subscribe.